one of my more fundamental complaints is that when we share these stories and we try to sanitize the experience of the characters to try to censor ourselves, as it were, we can unintentionally give the impression to people that they might actually be good people. In this sense, like who are the bad people in a lot of these Christian stories? They're the ones who smoke. They have occasionally had a beer, and they repented, and then they had another beer. It was the worst thing. And then so you have these people. They have these personal trials that are so flimsy, and then you put that book in front of someone who is engaged or is coming out of some serious life problems. You know, they're not, smoking is not on their list of the worst things they've ever done. And you bring the gospel to that person, they're going to say, even if you say to them, you say, listen, God loves you no matter what you do, they still say, well, but you don't know what I've done. And then we compound that by producing stories within the wider Christian church where Christians don't have serious problems, and the only people who are really Christians are people who didn't need Christ to begin with.
Yeah, the worst sin you can have in some Christian literature that I've read is baking an inadequate cookie for the church supper. And I'm not exaggerating. It's just unbelievable the level of mediocrity that you find there. And everybody here, I'm sure, has heard of Jerry Jenkins. He and Tim LaHaye, who, God bless him, just passed away.
This is on YouTube, remember?
Yes.
Just go on.
Jerry Jenkins is a guy that I've met, and he's a really good author, and he's published millions of books. And he almost got chucked out of the Christian writing community by some people because he's a professional poker player. He likes to play poker at the upper levels. And I know not every tenet of Christian faith approves of gambling, but it didn't diminish Jerry in my eyes as a writer when I found out he did that. But people judge his work based on that. And I think that's unfortunate because people who are troubled, who do have things that they need to set right in their life, they look at us as being kind of prissy sometimes as Christian authors and thinking, well, that can't possibly appeal to me because there isn't any reality in it.
Before we go on and put this in front of OJ and Jamie here, I will make it a distinction of sorts, though, that, yeah, our ministry tends to attract people with this mindset, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't actually avenues for people producing art just for Christians. I mean, I think we all agree with that if that's where your passion and your skill and, you know, whatever it is, then there's no problem with that. The problem would be when you, like, you try to cram the into a template. You try to dot all the I's. You know, okay, we had the story. Wait a minute. I ended the story and the guy isn't converted yet. Oh, back to the drawing board. And then, you know, now we're doing something else.
Yeah, it's not that you can't have good Christian fiction that brings a message. It's just you don't want it to be formulaic and dull.
The biggest sin is to be dull. Heresy is at least interesting.
That's probably why those books sell more in some cases.
Yeah.
My circle of friends. Pape?
I was going to say something, but then he started and I forgot what I was going to say.
We were talking about
There you go.
Christian audiences. You know, we're not.
Oh,
we attract.
yeah.
A certain
What I was going to
sort.
say is, and I can only speak for myself personally, but I don't really have an interest in. If I were writing fiction for Christians, it would be aimed at making Christians think of things in ways that they're not accustomed to or comfortable with necessarily thinking. So try to approach the idea of love, like unconditional love, in a way that maybe they wouldn't normally see or wouldn't normally think about, or the idea of grace in a way, in a context that maybe they haven't seen before. I don't have any interest or see the value in, and I know there probably is value, and I just can't see it, but I can't see the value in just writing just a by the numbers story where someone gets saved at the end, someone, smokes, and then that's a gateway to like beer, and then eventually like
Comic
they
books.
have and then comic books, perhaps, and PG-13 movie. And then, 5 chapters later, they are tearfully repenting and have come back to God. I don't see the value in those types of stories, but that's just me.
And I want to differentiate that too, because certain age groups require those kinds of stories. So if you're writing for children or young adults where you're trying to form a moral compass for them, maybe it's not the time to introduce the heroin-addicted single mother who's just come out of a life of human trafficking. So that may not be the character you want to go with. You may want to pick someone who is a teenage boy or a girl who is suffering from a weight problem or depression, and find something in their life that's redeeming, and tell a good story, because God knows I was a fat 14-year-old. And there are a lot of kids out there who just have a hard time being accepted by others, and maybe you can minister to them with a book like that. So there's some merit to things like that. I've got a couple of friends that write YA books that are amazing, and one of whom is not with this press, but her name is Rajdeep Paulus, and Rajdeep has written some books that are young adult in nature that are just incredible. They're deep stories. And I love books like that, and I think if we can aspire to write things like that for adults with good topics and good subjects of interest in them, we don't have to do the cookie cutter. We can write other things that are really unique.
It's just the odd thing. I've been thinking, a lot of us who write Christ-themed things, we would love for someone to read what we write and then come to a place where, okay, I want to be a Christ follower too. But that's so different than the rest of the art that's out there. I love like the old Ian Fleming James Bond novels. That's my confession, right? That's my gateway drug. I love those things. But when Fleming's writing, he doesn't want to make me a spy. That's not his goal, is to make me be a spy.
Right.
He wants to tell a story about this spy. When you watch The Avengers, the goal there is not for me to become an Avenger. They want to entertain me.
You don't know about my secret identity yet.
Well, okay.
That is the worst Captain America suit I've ever seen. I just thought I'd tell you.
So I'm thinking, when I write, maybe this is where I'm a little bit different from where you guys are. I want to describe the world as I understand it, not so much as bring my reader to a place of adopting necessarily where I'm at. Although when I read the Bond novels, it is pretty cool, right? That's how I feel. So I want to be a coolness factor. There's a behind the velvet rope aspect to see what's on the other side.
So through the ministry, through our workshops, we've done a lot of thinking about this. And one of the things that we teach is that just by virtue of from the narrator's point of view, calling good things good and bad things bad, being morally right from the point of view of so just by way of example, your heroin dealer, he's not the hero of your story, and everything ends well, per se. And you're like, all of the way that you describe him is, he's the champion, and he ends with this palatial palace, and he goes to heaven. That would be kind of a mixed message that's brought out by the narrator. Where the narrator has the power, especially if it's a real life story, if it's grounded in reality at all, eventually there's a law enforcement guy right close behind him, and if you never mention that, you've done the story, and no justice really. So
was it you yesterday in one of the seminars? It all blends together after a while. Talking about monsters have to still be monsters. Someone yesterday was talking about the vampires, and was that you? Well, good job. Because you're right. That's what to describe it as it really is. The monsters you can't fall in love with the monsters and live happily ever after. Monsters are monsters, and I think that's what you're talking about when you describe our worldview is the heroin addict is not living a healthy life and living a life of Christ. So we want to describe that brokenness as it is. However, in the context of describing that brokenness, it's going to be messy. You can't describe that cleanly.
No, not really. And perhaps another aspect of the same thing. It reminds me of something. I'm pretty sure it was G.K. Chesterton who said that. What is it? I'll just paraphrase it. The old stories talk about the dragons, not because kids are afraid of dragons, but just so that the kids learn that dragons can be slain. Sorry. I apologize. So you have it exact. All right, so I'll stop talking about it and ruining it.
But to keep pushing that, I think you're right. One of my favorite moments is in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, right? The problem with Eustace was that he read books that didn't have dragons in them. Right. That's kind of. Remember, I wanted to call this thing Dragon Fest.
Yes. I almost called one of the tents the Dragon's Lair.
I wanted this festival. I advocated strongly 8 months ago that we call this Dragon Fest.
And then I remembered that no Christian bookstore would take you because you had haunting in one of the titles. And so I decided to stay away from the dragon.
But how cool would this be with a big giant dragon out here?
Shirts would sell.
Okay, so note to self for next year. So we have about
Dragon Fest 2017.
We have about 10 minutes left here. Look, the four of us, and I'm looking across. There's a lot of artists in different venues here. Don and two musicians back there. We might call Christian independent contractors or entrepreneurs of sort. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges that we've had in making a living from our artwork.
I got to get my mom to quit passing her copy of the book around to her friends and getting it back and lending it out again.
That's exactly right.
And Mom,
Stop.
if you're watching this, make them go to Amazon and buy it where the numbers count.
There's like one copy of my book going around my church. I'm like, stop it. If you love me, buy a copy. If you really love me, buy 10. I really don't care if you read it, just buy it.
I think that's part of it. It's just, you hear it as an author. Hopefully you hear it as an author. Wow, I loved your book. It was amazing. I'm like, super. Can you trot over to Amazon and leave 15 words that say that? Well, that's all it takes, 15 words, and Amazon will count it as a real review. And trust me, it makes a difference, because if you have 6 reviews after 3 years, not a lot of people are going to buy the book. You get 160, people will buy the book. So that's the biggest part of it, is actually getting people to go and say, I love this book, to their friends. Because that's how you sell the books. It gets spread around that way.
I completely agree.
Before I pass this over to Michael Pape there, one of the developing themes at Athanatos, Debbie and I have been talking about, is that one of the things we're cultivating that we feel that we need to cultivate the artists, but we've agreed that we need to cultivate the Christian consumer, to let the Christians who enjoy the art know that they can be part of the artist ministry in a more substantial way, not just by buying the stuff, which I know we're interested in that, but
baby steps.
Well, no, even beyond that part, the mercenary aspect of it. Beyond that, we need Christians in our society who know good art when they see it, who know a good book when they see it, who know a good movie when they see it, and are able to process that and present it in an edifying way to the people around them, to bring that to people. And in that sense, even if someone's not an artist, then whatever form of art it is, there's still room in Athanatos Christian ministry for that person, the one who's not an artist.
Yeah.
Hey,
I think I have a little bit of a different perspective from the rest of the people up here, and I'm only speaking for myself. And maybe Tony doesn't want to hear this, but I don't really care if you buy my stuff as long as you experience it in some way, like reading it. Sorry, Tony. I'm not wired that way, and I've given up on the whole making a living on writing thing.
all right, I'm going to scratch you off a list, just so you know.
I care.
Told you he's dead.
Okay, all right.
I think if you go into writing any kind of book so that you can repair to Barbados, you really need to go to your clinic and get drug tested almost immediately, because it doesn't happen overnight, with some very, very rare exceptions. It's a craft and a practice, and I'm sure Jamie will agree, the guy that gets up in the pulpit that first Sunday at a seminary school, he's probably not going to leave a lasting impression except where he tripped over the mic stand. So it's the same thing with authors. It takes a long time to get your act together enough to the point where readers will really like what you do, and you're not going to make a lot of money at first, maybe ever. But if you're doing it to make yourself happy and maybe represent your faith to people, those are pretty rewarding in and of themselves.
Yeah, you're not going to make a living doing this unless you, like, there's a small handful of people, and even they are very they're insecure financially because they keep having to write more books, right? So yeah, the goal is not to make a living. I'd like to break even. You know, that'd be good. But yeah, making a living. At this point, that's not. If it happened, great. I'd love for them to call tomorrow with a book deal offer for Butch Gregory. A movie deal. As long as Matt Damon doesn't play Butch Gregory, I'm fine.
Okay. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna say just a couple of things so that we can get going with Christian Lemke back there on his phone. So, there's parts of this festival vision that even the people on the stage don't know, and I'm going to take a minute to try to put those out there. One of the frustrations that I have as a writer and through Athanatos and as involved in Christian apologetics in general, Paul says this thing in 1 Corinthians about some people plant, some people water, some people reap. And that's never been me. I'm the one who goes out into the rocky field with the cart of cow poop and tries to make the soil better for someone else. And since I deal with cow poop, I don't usually get to see the reward. I don't get to do a whole lot of gospel presentations, because as soon as I say something like even remotely Christian with whoever I'm talking with, they're already ready to fight me. And so I kind of like I envy the evangelists a little bit, who get people at a different stage, and they're able to finally have that conversation. So because of that envy, no, not because of that envy, but because of that desire of mine, my ultimate vision for what I would like to see happen on this annual event somewhere in central Wisconsin, I would like to build a mid-scale city of Jerusalem. And in that city of Jerusalem, once a year, have a fully immersive passion play type thing, passion experience, where people come to the event. And for 3 or 4 days of that event, or a portion of that event, it'll be like a 4 or 5 day event, but for a day or two of that event, they're going to be here for 1 minute and then they're going to take a step. And as near as they can tell, they've entered first century Palestine. And we try to teach them and educate them on the historical realities that many of us know that lend credibility to the Christian faith, to the resurrection account. Things that we know but they don't know, that they won't recognize until they're actually immersed in it. Stuff that people don't learn until they go to Israel right now. And they find out, well, here's that stone that the Old Testament talks about. They still have the stone. They know where the well is. You know, here it is. We found the pool of Bethsaida, or whatever it is. This isn't made up. And then in the context then of that Jerusalem that is laden with apologetical defensive insights throughout, kind of like Ken Ham's Ark, but with a shorter bridge to the gospel proclamation. So then we'll reenact the last days of Jesus and end with him risen from the dead and the people spilling into the streets, proclaiming the gospel that they have heard that Jesus' body is gone, and with all that entails. So we'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. But that is like the greatest pinnacle of artistic creative expression that you can get. You've got builders, you've got drama, you've got writers, you've got painters. You know, anyone who's creative, even in the little tip of their finger, there will be something for them to do in this project. So this is a good enough opportunity to mention that as any, and we have to wrap it up though. What is it, 12:50 or 59? 1 minute? Yeah. All right, you guys gotta get off the stage.
Bye.
See ya.